Well, today is Monday, October 11th, 2004. My name is Ruth Frownstein, and I am interviewing Ralph Eder. And while we're talking about names, I'd like you to tell me your full name.
My full name is Ralph Haskell Eder.
Haskell,
Yes.
H-A-S-K-E-L-L.
Exactly.
Okay. Was your name always that, your family name always that, or was it changed when your family came over to the United States?
It was always that.
Okay. Where were you born, and where is your family from?
I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and my father was from a town at that time in Austria, Hungary. It's a town called Dukla, and it still exists. It's a small trading town in, again, Austria-Hungary, now a part of Poland. My mother was born in Germany.
Mm-hmm. And how old were they when they came to this country?
I believe my mother was a babe in arms when she came over, and my father was about 9 years old.
I see. So they were here quite a lot in the beginning there. Do you know what brought them here? Why the families decided to come?
I can only surmise that they came here looking for a life better than Europe offered the Jewish people at that time.
You think it was anti-Semitism or economic factors or both?
Probably a combination of both.
Okay. Did you ever talk about their life in the old country?
My father used to reminisce about it a little bit as a boy. He used to remind me that he used to go out in the rivers on horses' backs and swim on and off the horses' backs, and that's my best recollection.
I see. Okay. And how did he make a living here?
He had a flag company. He founded Eder Manufacturing Company, which, while they did a variety of other things, their primary product was manufacturing flags, banners, pennants, and items of that nature.
Was that American flags or flags of other countries?
Primarily American flags, but they also made flags of other countries.
I find that very interesting that an immigrant who came here as a young child was manufacturing American flags. Very interesting thing. Okay, can you tell me a little bit what it was like for you growing up in Milwaukee?
Well, I really had a very pleasant childhood, and I guess like Topsy in Uncle Tom's Cabin, I kind of just growed. I went to public school. I joined a Boy Scout troop which my father had founded at Temple Bethel. I went to Hebrew school, and I just kind of just growed and enjoyed my childhood.
Is there something that you remember the most about it, an incident that stands out in your mind?
Oh, I have many, many recollections, but nothing that I would say stands out in my childhood.
What kind of neighborhood did you grow up in?
I grew up in St. Sebastian's Parish on 52nd Street, 1728 North 52nd Street, north of Washington Boulevard and south of Vine Street. And it was a nice neighborhood of people who had steady jobs or small businesses. The neighborhood was kept up well, and the house still stands.
Did you ever go back to visit it?
Interesting you should ask. I drive by the house about once a year. And the house was offered for sale recently, and I was tempted to ask for a tour, but unfortunately it never came to fruition.
I see. Was the neighborhood particularly Jewish?
The neighborhood that I lived in, or I should say the locus of the neighborhood that I lived in, was not particularly Jewish. But we were surrounded by a scattering of Jewish people. But if we went a little further north or a little further east, the neighborhood became increasingly Jewish.
I see. And did you have a number of Jewish childhood friends?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did your family belong to a synagogue?
Yes, they did. My father was a founder and first president of the original Temple Bethel on, I believe, 48th and Garfield, 47th or 48th and Garfield.
Is that the one? Now that's the one that's now in Mequon?
That's the one that subsequently moved to Sherman Boulevard,
Right.
and then
And now it's in
now it's in
Mequon.
Mequon, right.
Okay. Was going to the synagogue important for you and your family?
It was part of the regimen of growing up and part of the regimen of their life, so to say whether it was important or unimportant, they did it.
Okay.
My father, by the way, was active in the synagogue,
Okay.
active with the synagogue education facility, and active with, let's say, the people governing the synagogue.
Okay. So, as far as your Jewish educational background was concerned, did you go to religious school, or to Hebrew school? Did you have a bar mitzvah?
I went to Hebrew school. I went to bar mitzvah instruction, and yes, I was bar mitzvah.
What was it like having a bar mitzvah in those days?
Well, it was a normal procedure towards for a young Jewish boy to be bar mitzvahed. And in addition to going to Hebrew school, I was instructed, I believe, perhaps by the rabbi or an assistant, in reading and chanting the liturgy for the bar mitzvah ceremony.
And you read from the Torah?
Read from the Torah.
Okay. Was your family observant? An observant Jewish family, like observing all the holidays and like.
We kept kosher in our home. We did not have separate sets of dishes, that is, we were not Orthodox. The interpretation of kashrut for an Orthodox family, but we bought, purchased kosher meats, observed the holidays, and as I said, kept kosher in our home.
Okay. Were you growing up, and let's extend that to after growing up in your adult life too, aware of anti-Semitism in Milwaukee?
I can't really say that I was targeted by people who were anti-Semitic.
But did you feel that there was anti-Semitic feeling in the city?
I don't think growing up in those years it was a subject of a lot of apprehension or a lot of discussion in our home. People were too busy making a living and getting on with their daily lives. They didn't have the luxury of let's say, politicizing
Of issues,
of
right?
issues, right.
Okay.
Excuse me, I do recall my father listening to Father Coughlin and Adolf Hitler on our Bremer Tully radio, and certainly being very apprehensive about what they were preaching.
Okay. Dennis, I'm interested in your, if you had any involvement in the Jewish community with agencies like JFS or the Federation or anything like that.
Not really as a child,
How-
although
as an adult?
my father was mildly involved.
In what sorts of ways?
Primarily with the synagogue.
Okay. Also, are you a war veteran?
Yes,
From which war?
World War II,
Well,
The
we
big
have so
war.
many now, unfortunately.
unfortunately.
Well, Well, tell me about your experience in World War II.
Well, after graduation from high school, I went 1 year to pre-engineering at the University of Wisconsin Extension Division in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I always wanted to go to sea. Even as a child, I was always interested in boats and the sea, and I was determined either to go to the Merchant Marine Academy or the Coast Guard Academy or the Naval Academy. And I received an appointment to the Naval Academy and spent 3 years there, then went out in the fleet.
I see. So you were overseas during World War II?
Yes.
And where were you?
For a short period of time in the Atlantic and for the major part of the time in the Pacific.
Were you involved in combat?
Our ship was involved in combat, but it was later in the war. It was the battleship Missouri.
Uh-huh. And so what rank did you attain?
I attained the rank of lieutenant junior grade.
Okay, and so you were, how long was your war experience? Was it several
Well, I
years?
attended the academy from 41 to 44, even though we were nominally the class of 45, but because of the war, we
They bumped you up?
forewent, I might say, summer vacations, and we graduated in 3 instead of 4 years. And I was a gunnery officer for a period of time, and then an engineering officer, a deck watch officer on the Missouri until I left the Navy in about 1948.
I see. And then when you left, did you participate in the reserves at all?
No, I did not.
Okay, well, let's get on to another subject.
Well, I might say that I was at the surrender ceremony for Japan to the United States aboard the Missouri in Sagami-Wan, or Tokyo Harbor. And I was an escort aboard the ship, and I escorted MacArthur to the ceremony, and I was in attendance at the ceremony.
That's outstanding.
Circumstances.
It just happened because of your position, or were you picked to do this? Or?
I was assigned by the captain, along with others, to do these duties.
And how did you feel participating in these events?
Well, it was very interesting. It was a big part of history.
You felt you were definitely a part of history, right?
I think for me to say I felt I was a part of history kind of redefines history. History is something that others appraise, and I'm taken to believe that it was a part of history.
Okay, well, let's go on to Israel as a subject. How do you connect to Israel? How do you feel about it? What's your experience with it?
Well, my connection with Israel, my connection with most Jewish affairs, has been through my wife, Louise, because she was always very dedicated, devoted, and interested in all things Jewish. So my connection was primarily stimulated by her. For example, she donated a school at Arad in Israel for pre-kindergarten students, and it still exists. So that's my primary connection with Israel.
But you've probably been there many, many times, right?
Well, I think Louise was there about 28 times. I think I was there about perhaps 3 or 4.
I see. Have you been there recently?
Not recently.
Would you like to visit again? I mean, how do you feel about visiting again now? I mean, the situation is...
Well, I'm distressed about the total situation in Israel, both the internal politics, the almost what seemed to be very difficult foreign politics, and it's a cause of distress to me.
Okay, how do you feel about the present and the future of the Milwaukee Jewish community?
Well, it seems that it certainly has a vibrant present, and with people like you, it certainly has a vibrant future.
Thank you. Is there any lesson in life that you have learned that has stuck with you and carried you through, or like been a cornerstone of your life?
I've had many lessons, and I can't point to anyone that's been a cornerstone. I think the philanthropic part of my life was instilled by my wife.
What are you the most proud of in your life?
Having an educated family and being quite content at this age, and having led a good life.
All good things to be proud of. Do you have any regrets that you might want to share?
I don't have any regrets. I have some things that I blush a little bit about having done in my early age, but
Well, we all have those.
thank you. You said it more eloquently than I did.
What was the happiest moment of your life?
Well, I think my total life has been fairly happy.
And was there anything that you would say was the saddest part of your life?
Oh, when I lost my wife.
Is there something about yourself that no one knows that is interesting that you might want to share?
I think I'm pretty transparent. I feel like Mr. Cellophane in the stage play. You see right through me.
Okay. Well, it looks pretty good what we're seeing through you, and you're happy and satisfied.
Just don't probe too deeply.
How would you like to be remembered?
Just as having occupied a good space on earth and hopefully left a good family.
One thing we didn't talk about was, do you have children?
Yes, I have 4 children.
4 children, and are they living in Milwaukee now?
My eldest daughter lives in Denver, and the other 3 children live in Milwaukee.
I see. And what sorts of occupations are they in?
Well, my one daughter who lives in Denver has a unique occupation. She trains dogs and takes dogs to hospitals, so they
to work with
patients.
I see.
My daughter in Milwaukee also works with dogs
Uh-huh.
and does assistant veterinary work and dog massaging and things like that. My one son is inheriting the business that I started, and my other son is recently sold his business, and he's looking for another business opportunity.
I see. The business that you started, then, is you weren't in the flag business.
No, I was in a long series of businesses, and the business now that we're in is In-Place Machining Company.
I see. I don't know what that means, but
Well, we go around the world doing machining on-site on large machinery.
I see. And that's a new business that you're doing now?
Well, it's an evolved business. It's morphed, as they would say today, from several other businesses. And that's the culmination of the amorphous situation that all these other businesses
I see.
were in.
Okay. See if there was something else I wanted to ask you about that. Oh, it sounds like this is something that came from your engineering background, machining.
I've always been associated pretty closely with that field.
All of those things.
Mhm.
Good. Okay. And you're not associated with the Eder Flag Company?
No, not associated with
Oh,
it.
okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about that we didn't get to?
I just have to concede the interviewing to you.
Okay.
Many things I could talk about, but I'm not sure what you would want to hear.
Well, anything that you think would be interested for posterity, because that's what we're doing this for, is for future generations to know what people were like in the Milwaukee Jewish community of 2004. So if there's anything that you think would be particularly applicable to that.
I just can't think of anything that's outstanding. I guess perhaps you'd have to know more about me in order to in order to know where to
Okay.
put the darts.
Okay, well, I guess this concludes our interview.
Okay.
And it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed it, and thank you very much for
Okay,
coming.
it's been my pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you. French, Spanish, German, English, and I've traveled all over, and really they've all been very, very interesting. And Milwaukee, Wisconsin turns out to be the best place that I visited and settled.
I'm always glad to come back.
It's always good to come back.
Well, I think it's wonderful to hear from somebody who is so satisfied with his life. I think that's great.
I'm sure that most people are, if they look close at them.
it. Okay, well.
I've always had a workshop. I built boats, big wooden boats, and done a lot of very, very interesting things.
Well, I'm sorry that I didn't know more about you before. That was one of the things that I said, Jay, that criticism of this was that I didn't really know anything about the people I'm interviewing ahead of time to.
Did you have a sheet?
I didn't have anything.
Because we had a sheet about Ralph with some of his
Oh, I never saw it.
characteristics.
I never saw it.
That wasn't with your
I'm sorry.
packet. I'm sorry that we should have gotten that to you.
Okay.
That's probably my fault.
You could interview me again in 10 more years. Thanks, Ruth.
Okay.